So when we see stunning images of snow leopards and rhinos and gorillas, and perhaps the biggest silverback of them all, Sir David Attenborough, I think it's understandable why most people think that FFI's focus is charismatic animals. But actually that does belie the reality that many of our programs include important work on plants and habitats and ecosystems of which they're a part. And this work stretches from protecting unique plant communities, through to threatened tree species, through to entire forest ecosystems and landscapes. To give you some examples, the Cape Floral Kingdom is known for its rich biodiversity. It's got about 8,000 different plant species. Almost 70% of these are found nowhere else on Earth. In 1999, in response to threats from vineyards, agriculture, golf courses, FFI established the Flower Valley Conservation Trust, which continues to work today to deliver a sustainable conservation program, which is based on the marketing and sale of these fantastic fynbos flowers. The Global Trees Campaign is a joint initiative with Botanical Gardens Conservation International. It's the only international campaign dedicated to conserving threatened tree species. Currently, GTC is currently working to conserve Grandidier's boab in Madagascar, an amazing back-pollinated upside-down tree used by local people for food, to make rope, and even to build houses. The Lansan tree of St. Lucia, which produces a valuable resin to make a kind of incense. And the largest rhododendron tree in the world, the remarkable big tree rhododendron in China. In Southeast Asia, we're using the REDD+ finance mechanism to protect whole forests. REDD gives standing forests a dollar value according to the amount of carbon that they contain. In this way, they incentivize developing countries to leave their forests standing with the carbon locked up in them. Revenues from carbon credits can be reinvested in local communities and in the conservation of the forests themselves. And I'm pleased to say that FFI has been at the forefront of this work, particularly in our Asia-Pacific region, in Vietnam, the Philippines, Cambodia, and Indonesia. Mark mentioned that I'm the director of the Eurasia Programme, so taking a look a little bit closer to home, we also take a number of approaches to protecting plant species in our region. Firstly, we direct targeted conservation of specific species. This is actually an apple cut in half, and this is Malus niedzvetskiana, Niedzvetski's apple. We're working to protect this species in Kyrgyzstan with the support of the Global Trees Campaign. It's an endangered species and a wild relative of the domesticated apples, and so it's of global importance as a genetic resource. It has a bright red flesh and red pigment, and it's thought to have medicinal properties. In some areas, it's eaten, especially by children, as a means to prevent cancer. This is Pyrrhus tajikistanica, so-called Tajik pear, which we're working to protect in Tajikistan. This is an endemic pear. It's critically endangered and restricted to just one area of the country, between 13 and 1,500 meters in the Darvaz mountain range in southern Tajikistan. Our surveys last year found 125 specimens of this species. Secondly, we also protect habitats, such as the fruit and nut forests of Central Asia. These forests consist of ancient walnut stands, which cast their shadows over wild apples, pears, cherry plums, hawthorns, barberry, pistachio, almond, mulberry, maples. You don't go hungry in those forests. Many of these species are the ancestors of today's domesticated fruit and nut varieties that are cultivated and consumed around the globe. That's a cousin, it's a Braeburn. So the next time you're in your local supermarket reaching for a packet of walnuts, a packet of almonds, or maybe even an apple, just think on that its ancestor is probably still growing back in Central Asia. Does anybody want an apple? Hungry, Esther? Oops. Thirdly, we also work at a larger scale to protect entire ecosystems and landscapes. I'll describe two such approaches from Romania in a moment, but first I'd like to go back to those charismatic fauna. James, you're saying the world would survive without the fauna, but actually I think they do have a key role to play in plant conservation. I was in a meeting recently with somebody in this room about our project to protect the Iberian lynx in Portugal, and I was asked, beyond this being a critically endangered cat, why bother protecting the animal? Well, This was a pragmatic question, actually, and I think he was seeking to understand why we put all this effort, funds, resources into protecting one simple animal. And what I answered was that the lynx is a keystone species for its ecosystem. As a keystone species, its behaviour directly affects the behaviour of all the other animals on which it preys or interacts. So this includes grazers and browsers, such as rabbits and deer, but also other carnivores, for example. This type of influence is known as trophic cascade. That's your term for this evening, trophic cascade. Through trophic cascade, the lynx actually acts as an ecosystem engineer, transforming the place in which it lives. Where does it live? The lynx lives in the cork oak forests of Spain and Portugal, and its presence is vital to maintaining these ecosystems and their health. In addition to revenues from tourism and the sale of local produce such as Iberico ham, cheeses, preserves, these forests also produce 60% of the world's cork and provide employment for 80,000 people in Portugal alone. So, activities to protect the lynx also protect the ecosystem and the ecological services, products and jobs that they provide. And importantly, the lynx also means we protect the cork oak tree, the ultimate benefit of which I note most of you are enjoying this evening, the cork. If you take one message away from my speech, please buy a wine that's stoppered with cork, not screw cap. Looping back to our theme of flora, James very nicely laid out why we should be bothered with plants. They're a foundation for life, we depend on them for our well-being, they're provided with food, timber, paper, cosmetics and many other important resources which we've seen. So there are lots of reasons really to be concerning ourselves both with the conservation of plants at all scales, but also the conservation of keystone species, those ecosystem engineers on which they depend. Now I want to take you back to Romania. For those of you that haven't yet visited Romania, you really need to find space in your diaries, book a flight and jump on the plane. It's about 2.5 hours from London. The people are incredibly welcoming, the countryside is beautiful, and the biodiversity is amongst the very best in the Eurasia region. Nowhere else in Europe has so many bears and wolves roaming around, and the forests, grasslands and plant diversity at their peak times are simply breathtaking. This is the Trnava Mare region of Transylvania, which is one of the most important high nature value farmed landscapes in Europe. That name means what it says, high nature value farmed landscape. These are places that are used and lived in that have incredible biodiversity value. This region contains a remarkable diversity of plants and is richer in biodiversity than many wilderness areas of a similar size. The landscape also has some of the highest plant diversity recorded anywhere in the world. The combination of small land parcels, traditional livestock farming methods and low fertilizer inputs has created a complex habitat mosaic. Excuse me one second. This mosaic is dependent on continued low-impact management by small-scale farming communities. Uniquely in this area and in lowland Europe, this farmed landscape still supports large populations of bears and wolves, and large herbivores, birds of prey, rare butterflies, and many, many other invertebrates. Nested within this landscape are these unique features, exceptionally known as movili. These are natural structures which support an exceptional diversity of plants. Many plants on the movili, especially on the driest slopes, are among the rarest and most threatened in Europe, including many orchids, but also the handsome nodding sage. A typical plant of the steppes, this is now extinct in Eastern Europe, and so the Transylvanian populations are particularly important. We also have the meadow pasqueflower, a very sensitive plant which is threatened across the whole of Europe. And we also have the Banat crocus, almost endemic to Romania, a little bit sneaks into a neighbouring country. It's regarded as critically endangered and it's threatened by habitat change and loss and also overcollection for horticulture. The Adept Foundation, and we have some of their staff here tonight, was established to protect this landscape and its species. They work closely with farmers, shepherds and local communities to make small-scale farming more viable. In doing so, they're resisting the tendency for farmers to move towards more intensive farming approaches, which would irreversibly damage the landscape and lose biodiversity. How are they doing this? Well, firstly, they support small-scale farmers to improve their access to agricultural subsidy. For from the European Union. Impressively, almost 1,400 small farmers managing 18,000 hectares of high nature value farmland are now receiving €2.5 million a year through access to increased access through to agri-environment schemes as a result of ADEPT's work. That's just one figure I know about that work they're doing. Secondly, they provide ideas, support and facilities to enable local people to increase their income from the sale of local products such as milk and cheese and preserves and honey, and also a range of handicrafts. In this respect, ADEPT's negotiations with milk processors on behalf of the farmers and their provision of European standard milk collection points has created an additional €40,000 a year income for 170 farmers in one community who graze over 700 cows on high nature value farmed areas. Their efforts to promote agro-tourism in the region has also contributed to an increase of visitor numbers from 350 spending visitors in 2006 to over 10,000 in 2011. They also work at national and European levels to develop policies that support small-scale farming and the conservation of high nature value farmed landscapes. And they've become regular advisors to the Romanian Ministry of Agriculture and to the EU on high nature value farmland issues. Finally, ADEPT are championing both the biodiversity and the culture of the region, and they've generated quite some interest and support at the highest levels. As you can see, Prince Charles is delighted to be meeting Mark Rose. Although they look like a happy bunch, as with so many conservation NGOs, ADEPT are struggling with too much work and too little funding, which is making it difficult for the team to sustain and expand their important work to protect this landscape. In our view, the Târnava Mare landscape and the Movili are of global conservation importance and they must be protected. Inspiring local organisations such as ADEPT are the bedrock upon which conservation is built and will be sustained in the future, and it is critical that these groups are also supported. So, with the support of the Grass Valley Trust and Halcyon Land and Sea, we've partnered with ADEPT to purchase some 650 hectares of high nature value farmland areas, including some of those movili, those humps I was showing you. We'll designate these purchase areas as micro-reserves, protecting them from deliberate or accidental damage in the future, while ensuring that the land continues to be used for small-scale agriculture. The purchased land will be entrusted to the ADEPT Foundation, who will be able to attract the EU subsidies, which will provide a significant chunk of the core funding they need to operate in the coming years. In parallel, we're also working with ADEPT to build its internal capacities, developing a strategic plan, improving finance and management systems, such type of activities, to give it the best possible chance of sustaining itself and its activities in the future. Two of the directors are actually sitting here, and straight after this meeting we're jumping in the car and heading off to start our next strategic planning workshop tomorrow. So this is conservation in action. So, almost there, Mark. Before I finish, I want to introduce you to another region of Transylvania. And this is the Zaran Landscape Corridor, and the site of our newest and perhaps our most exciting programme. This is a beautiful forested landscape that lies at the centre of the last remaining habitat corridor for large carnivores, including bears and wolves and lynx, moving between two important mountain ranges, the western and the southern Carpathian Mountains. Shaped like an hourglass, the corridor is 100 miles long, 15 miles wide at its widest point, reducing to about 2 to 3 miles at their belt, the centre area. The corridor contains a large number of important habitats and species, including extensive beech forests. Many of these forests are pristine with undisturbed areas and fallen deadwood, forming an important habitat for invertebrates such as this Rosilia longicorn. The flora of the region is also very special, with around 1,190 species of vascular plant, almost 1/3 of the species known in Romania recorded in this area. Zaran is also one of the few places where traditional human settlements still remain intact. The typical farm and its activities mirror a centuries-old way of life. There's a house, a barn, an orchard, a vegetable plot, perhaps some bees and a few livestock, providing subsistence income for many people in this area. However, the way of life, the villages and local communities are in decline. Farms are being abandoned, forests are being illegally logged, and animals are being poached, wild animals are being poached. Poverty is very much visible when you visit this community. From a biodiversity perspective, the forests are being emptied of species and the landscape is being fragmented. It's being broken up by the intensification of agriculture and forestry, poaching, as I've mentioned, and poorly conceived infrastructure developments. Conflicts also increasing between people and wild animals. And the degradation of this landscape and the severing of the connection between its northern and southern parts has been highlighted as possibly the most important landscape conservation issue in Europe, certainly in the Carpathians. But there's good news. Fortunately, we are in a position to do something about both the loss of biodiversity and the decline of the local communities' fortunes in this region. With critical funding support from OMC investments and also Alcyon Land and Sea, we've leveraged 2.4 million from the EU for a 5-year programme of work to address the conservation of the landscape and keystone species, together with the provision of support to local people to improve their livelihoods. We've also secured the management of a protected area right at the heart of this corridor for the next 10 years. A critical part of our work will see us buying land and restoring habitat to help wild animals move through this landscape at its most difficult points. But I think I'm going to stop there and save the detail perhaps for a future event. These are exciting times in Romania, and if you're interested about learning more about this amazing country and its biodiversity, please feel free to contact any of the team any of the time. You might also want to keep an eye out for the upcoming FFI tour to Transylvania, which is planned for June 2015. So really, thank you very much for taking the time for being here this evening, and it's been a pleasure presenting. Thanks.